All right. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of The Context. We are here with some amazing speakers and excited to have Craig Jellick as my co-host today. Craig, how did you enjoy London, man? That was a pretty great event out at the MCP Dev Summit.
Yeah, it was great. Had a great time. I thought the summit went really well. I learned a lot personally, and I know a lot of other people had good conversations, learned a lot, real good turnout.
I'm getting like a background feedback of your audio.
Sorry.
I'm not sure what that is. Like a background feedback. It feels like it's coming from my end. I'm not sure what. Okay. Hopefully that gets rid of it somehow or another. Well, with that, let's get going. So, as I said, this was we had an incredible week last week in London. More than 500 people showed up for the second MCP Dev Summit. It was honestly more than I even was hoping. We completely sold out on tickets. The audience was incredible. We saw more than half the people, I think, were from the UK and Ireland. So it was a really, we had a lot of people come from the region. But other than that, it was people from all over the globe. About 20% from the US, people coming from all over Europe, people coming from Asia. So great talks. We're starting to get them up on YouTube. The first set of keynotes, I think, went up this morning. So if you haven't already, check out our YouTube channel, and you should be able to track the speakers, watch all the shows, and get involved. We also made a big announcement. We've locked up and confirmed the next summit. This one is going to be in New York next year. So we're going to be targeting the 2nd and 3rd of April, and it looks like it's going to be literally right downtown Manhattan in the Marriott Marquis. So should be a lot of fun to bring it back to the U.S. And I think that's the pattern we're hoping to go for. Been working with the steering committee and all the organizations that are involved, and the feeling is that having this type of MCP get together with all the key contributors, everyone participating in the standards on a 6-month basis is kind of ideal. It allows us to do one in the US and then one somewhere else in the world to connect with everyone else working on the project. So we're starting off coming back to the US for New York. So we haven't got anything up yet, no call for papers, no tickets available, no sponsorships available, but we will be certainly making announcements here as all those things come around. If you're interested in keeping up on everything we've been doing on the context, please, take a look at our YouTube channel. The recent talks have been fantastic. We're going to have an amazing set of speakers coming the rest of this year. I think we're filled up now well through Thanksgiving and into December. Just the number of organizations that are building MCP servers, that are building tools around MCP servers, just continues to scale. When we did the call for papers for London, we had 110, 120 talks, and there was dozens of excellent talks that we couldn't fit in. We had 36 talks at the conference. So we're going to be having a lot of those talks. A lot of those speakers are coming on the context over the next couple of weeks to share things we would have liked to have in London. So keep an eye on the channel and follow us if you haven't already. All right. So the next couple weeks we have some great talks coming. Today's talks I'll get to in just a minute, but if you look at what we have, there's 2 talks next week that look really exciting. One is about securing coding assistance, which is something I think a lot of us have been using more and more of, and I'm very interested in Rajiv's approach on that. The other one is a new TypeScript approach for building MCP servers. This one had a look at. Darren and I were chatting about it. It looks really interesting, so we're excited to have that on. And then we've got a couple talks on debugging and kind of building platforms that leverage MCP or kind of build around the concepts of MCP. So should be a good couple weeks of talks. With that, those of you who've been watching for a while know the format. We basically keep these talks relatively quick, 20 minutes or less. We really try to take your questions at the end of each talk. So if you're following along and you want to ask a question on LinkedIn or Discord or YouTube or X or wherever you're watching the conference or the talk, just put it in there. I usually get them all through here. And if for some reason we don't answer it there, we'll come back around and answer it afterwards in the chat window. All right, with that, let's get started. Our first talk today is one I'm super excited for. Slav Borets is the product manager at Render, and he's going to walk us through the Render MCP in some detail. And so any of you who are Render users or interested in how a major compute platform is exposing its capabilities over MCP, I think this talk is going to be fantastic. So, Slav, are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's get you going.
Let's get started. Thanks so much for the introduction. Looking forward to sharing more. So at a very high level, let me do a quick intro about myself and share more about kind of how we entered the journey of MCP, and then I'll deep dive into the deck itself. And then I have a short demo at the end. At a very high level, the Render is really, it's obviously a developer tool built by developers for developers. And we were within the month of MCP protocol being out, we already had internal prototype. It took us a couple of iterations in couple internal kind of debates and a beta and then a GA to reach the state of a product where we are now. We're very happy with the outcomes, but we've also have, we went through the entire journey of building a prototype we're not happy with and then redoing it from scratch and then shipping kind of V3 that's finally out of the market today. So happy to share any insights or learnings along the way. And for what it's worth, I'm really excited about Naseem's talk later because observability has been one of the gaps in our product that we're hoping to close soon. Before I begin, I actually wanted to give a quick kind of explain, for those who don't know what Render is, I want to offer a quick TLDR about the product. At a very high level, Render is a modern cloud for developers. We offer 4 key things for developers of any size and shapes. Obviously, it's a zero DevOps platform. We automate the complex parts of cloud infra, from servers, networking to security. Our job is to help developers focus entirely on writing code instead of thinking about infrastructure. We offer, to do this, we offer a unified experience and a bunch of key primitives baked in. So from web services to static sites to databases to even to a degree to even in-memory caches, all that is baked in so developers can pick the building blocks they need to fit their product. Everything is obviously Git powered, so fundamentally, if you push code, it's auto deployed across all the instances that you have available. And if your product actually hits product market fit and starts scaling, Render can take care of scaling for you as well. So we have got vertical and horizontal scaling, and we've got plenty of customers who are running giant payloads on Render effectively, and there's still a giant room to grow. Just to set the stage, Render today supports fairly large and breakout companies, and at this point, close to 3 million developers have used the product so far. So when we rolled out our MCP server, we actually rolled it out to collection to all these users, and we're getting fantastic feedback from all of them. So the question here is why create an MCP server, and why we actually we're so excited about the MCP protocol and MCP server. At a high level, it came down to kind of key 3 points. One is we saw within, I think at the point when Sonnet 3.5 launched, we actually saw that LLMs started to get exceptionally good at parsing through large stack traces. So obviously context windows grew, but also reasoning improved. And at that point, at Sonnet 3.5, Sonnet was the key model that actually made it possible. Separately, we also saw agent mode adoption grew across IDEs. Internally as well as externally, we keep hearing customers that they depend on agent mode more and more, and they ask agents within the other cloud code or Cursor to basically write code for them and ask questions. And we wanted to build a tool that supports that loop. And then last but not least, we actually, a key trend that we're seeing today in Render in general across the platform is more developers are entering this space with minimal DevOps experience, and they really need help and guidance on how to properly set up their infrastructure and make it work at scale. In general, there's plenty of tutorials available how to make something work on your local machine, but there's very little tutorials, or at least they're not very accessible, on how to actually take your local app and host it in production and make it scale it in a way that supports the growth that you're hoping to support. And what we're seeing is many of these developers, overly relying on LLMs and MCP servers to get their job done. And MCP servers has been the kind of one of the key platforms and key tools in our arsenal to enable these individuals to succeed in scaling their products, to thousands, if not millions, of users. When we took on the responsibility of building MCP server, our goal was to drastically shortcut the time they've spent on debugging and remediating their issues without leaving the IDE. So the key goal was to help, basically enable users to be as effective as possible within the core server. IDE or Cloud Code, many of these tools are used in tandem or separately. And our goal was to basically make developers not even being able to detect and remediate the problem within their IDE as quickly as possible without entering kind of even render UI. And specifically, we focused on core 4 concrete use cases that we wanted to nail, that we saw developers either struggle today or were not necessarily happy with the outcomes. One was troubleshooting. This is the most painful one. It's a fairly common problem for many beginners, but also for seasoned developers to actually have a hard time debugging and figuring out the root cause of 500 errors or sudden spike, why my builds break and why service errors are coming up, and troubleshooting this and fundamentally root causing this to the exact point where the error started to happen and why it's usually time consuming and requires 10, 20, maybe sometimes hours of time. LLMs are exceptionally good at this. Separately, many cases, when you need to launch a new service, it takes you 3 or 5 different deploys and iterations to actually make this work. We believe MCP servers can enable you to kind of deploy a new piece of infrastructure in minutes, if not seconds, given it can just quickly loop through configs and make it work without you actually require manually interfering at all. Separately, database operations. Many devs build databases and depend on databases quite a bit, as you can imagine. LLMs are exceptionally good at writing queries, and we also believe that they're with the right context and the right tools, they can also start querying the database and give the right insights to developers. And last but not least, but in many cases, as you start scale, you start running into performance degradations and performance issues. And again, we saw that this is a key area of toil of developers, and LLMs are really good at trying to evaluate the state of affairs with the right metadata. And MCP servers was a key tool that we thought could provide the right context to the agent about the service state and help them identify and root cause performance issues across the platform. And as a result, what we actually end up shipping is we bundled basically 22 tools that cover majority of the use cases. I'll cover them in a demo as well. I'll show you exactly what we've shipped. We've initially launched a local version of the MCP server and then moved to remote. That's now preferred way of using the product. And we build it through many iterations. We actually build it with safety and security in mind. What that means at a high level is we've actually specifically either prompted or explicitly removed ability for MCP for agents to do destructive actions. So you can create, but you cannot delete or write into databases. This is a kind of a critical feedback we've gotten from customers, and we suspect this is a thing that many developers want today. And for those MCP servers that have not adopted this, they should, because this is one of the key points of feedback we've been getting. Kind of as an outcome, so far thousands of developers have used the MCP server. We're seeing tremendous adoption of this, of the MCP server itself. We're top 10% of our customers making more than 300 tool calls per week. Some of them making a couple thousand. Developers are really, really dependent on this piece of functionality to effectively debug and scale their product. And based on the feedback directly, we're seeing that the developers have cut down their ability to spin up new services and to debug issues from hours to minutes. This has been a tremendous productivity gain for many of our customers, and it's something that we're really proud of, and we really want to advocate and promote. So with that, I actually wanted to do a quick demo and showcase exactly what we've built and put kind of all these things in context of real code and real use cases. Amazing. So first, let me actually explain what we've, before I jump into code, I actually want to explain what we've done. So at a very high level, I've deployed 3 services on render. One is essentially a front end a backend, and a database. The backend itself has purposely, the backend itself is just an API that has a couple of endpoints, but it's all these endpoints are purposely built to showcase kind of broken experiences. One has a memory leak, the other one is very intense on their CPU, one is just slow to respond, the other one's error prone, and the other one just calls for users from database. The job here is to actually showcase how effective MCP service can be at debugging issues and quickly remediating and pushing changes. Separately, I've got a couple of short front end just to kind of test these endpoints, but the test itself will be running against the backend. Amazing. Okay, cool. So let me switch to a cursor and explain what we've done and talk about the kind of the setup here. A quick thing. I'm gonna take over. I'm gonna share a different screen. Give me 1 sec. So this is basically cursor. We've got random MCP loaded in, and it has currently 22 tools. So you can see basically tools we've loaded have plenty of description and all the things kind of explained. You can create services, you can deploy it. There's plenty of ways to interact with the product without necessarily leaving the IDE. And I'll show a couple examples really fast. So as I mentioned, a lot of the kind of the backend that was deployed has some issues. And let me just quickly show a demo of potentially trying kind of using the IDE itself or the agent mode to actually identify and debug these problems first. So a classic example is I have a slow query. I don't it'd be nice if I could quickly identify exactly which endpoints are slow and find a way to remediate it. So I can just prompt an agent to do this really fast. Find the slowest endpoints in my MCP demo service and suggest remediation. And agents are really good at figuring out, reading through the MCP server, basically provided context and immediately starting to pull the right tools to make the experience work. So first, it's basically listing all services, and then it finds the exact thing, and then it starts running the right calls to pull metrics and figure out exactly which endpoints are slow. Here we go. And then it immediately has the context for the tool, for the code itself. So it can quickly pinpoint not only the source of the data, but exactly with the code that it was used to generate the data. So it's pretty effective at matching the service metadata with actual code that root caused the problem. So you can actually see it really fast here. So it actually, identify that there's a CPU intensive endpoint that's purposely slow that actually has really high response times. Pinpointed the exact issue. We have a blocking recursive Fibonacci calculation here. And then it immediately started to suggest remediation for the problem. But as you can see, this is this is something that took me a second. But in reality, if I didn't have this tool, it would have taken quite some time. Obviously, this problem was overly simplistic, but the fact that it was able to exactly go through the list of issues, figure out the exact root cause for all of them, and quickly give me a solution is a huge time saver for many engineers. Separately, we can actually, this is an example of a really simple, basically, problem and the root cause. Something that's more advanced that I wanted to switch to that many developers use, and I wanted to showcase an example of, is actually trying to, in many cases, as you try to scale, you quickly run into an issue with costs. Your CPU, memory, and bandwidth start to creep up. And in many cases, developers really need tools to effectively predict and analyze their bandwidth and kind of CPU use and memory usage. So this is something I pre-built earlier today. I've actually just prompted Cloud Code with the MCP plugin baked in to generate a graph of responses that display bandwidth for a particular metadata service, and analyze basically and predict how much bandwidth I'll be consuming based on current trends. This is a fundamentally hard thing to do and requires a lot of manual work, but within seconds, it built its own. It pulled the data, built a Python script to run this, and it ran the script effectively, and then outputted a full graph of the data. And as you can see, this is actually a very useful way to interact with the product as well. So not only did it help me figure out the kind of what was the peak usage and the use over time, but help build a model for how much bandwidth I'll be consuming for the rest of October, which is something that many developers don't think about. But this is a key, in many cases, surprises when it comes to billing and costs come from bandwidth and unnecessary and spikes in outbound, inbound traffic. And this is one way to prevent this and monitor this. The other example that I thought of is moving on. The other example is, in many cases, interaction with databases is fairly toilsome and complicated process. We can relatively quickly do this as well. So you can actually prompt, given we have tools for databases, you can actually prompt the agent to say like, hey, show me all the users in the and it should just pull this up really fast. This is a quick way for you to kind of, without writing custom queries and running them, you can actually do this yourself, ask these organic, language, like natural language queries, and work with your database and pull direct metadata out for your development needs. Yeah, it's pulling the right Postgres instance, and it's able to, it's going to pull up a list of users now. There you go, really fast. So yeah, at a very high level, I showed a couple examples. One is just debugging inefficiencies and issues with your product. If something breaks, you can quickly identify and debug it. Separately, you can actually build really complicated, you can actually use MCP server to empower your local cloud code and agents to write scripts for you and embed that metadata to the right custom analytics and tools. And last but not least, you can actually use MCP server to interact with databases. This is obviously a really simplistic example with databases, but you can see you can take this even further and make this a superior tool in your development tool stack.
Very cool, Slav. Thank you so much for diving into that in some depth. I had a couple of questions I'd love to understand. So you said since this has been out, you've seen a lot of adoption. Where are have you had any, kind of, I'm curious, like how early do you see most people start with this? Is it often people that are new to render and they're sort of like, I really want to be like, ask Claude to deploy my app to render, and I pull in the MCP server and sign up for an account and get my key, and that's sort of the beginning of their journey. Have you found any of that, or is it mostly people who are already advanced render users and now want to automate sort of some of the management they've been doing with it?
I think it's definitely so. It's definitely bulk of the customers are earlier in their development journey. And they're basically what's happening is LLMs, the trend we're seeing in general across render or any other past platforms is we're seeing the growth in two spaces. One is number of developers who are just entering the space is growing exponentially. LLMs made any tech curious individual basically almost a junior developer and empowering them to ship their own code. But they frequently lack the DevOps skills necessary to make it scale and work make it scale in the cloud. And they're relying on modern MCP servers and other products to kind of shortcut that gap. And then separately, we're also seeing many developers, and well, we're seeing our larger customers depending on MCP servers for custom analysis and for example, the example I showed of bandwidth and CPU and memory utilization, all these things are something that if you're a large customer and you're spending a lot of money on the product, you will write the scripts manually. And this is the way for you to really find a way to predict your costs, to manage your costs, to optimize the platform to fit your need without feeling you're, just spending money without that shouldn't be spent.
Yeah, I mean, right now, do you feel like having an MCP server for a PaaS platform is a must-have, like to be competitive? I think Railway has one. I know AWS has one. I'm pretty sure some of the others have them as well. I think Netlify has one. So, are you finding that this is like you can't compete in the market without an MCP server now at this point if you're a hosting platform?
I think it's hard to say. Like, I think what we're seeing is two things. One is people who know about the problem with MCP servers. It hasn't reached mass adoption in terms of not everyone knows about the existence of MCP servers, but those who do find a ton of value. So what we're seeing is every month more and more people organically discover MCP servers, and we're seeing the Google basically results going up. So more and more users are realizing the MCP service is the gate for them to actually ship their stuff to production and effectively scale. And as that knowledge spreads, the adoption spreads. But I don't actually see a way for modern PaaS providers to effectively support, it's effectively newcoming engineers or engineers who are not formally, trained by in engineering to effectively scale and build on their platform. MCP server is a key gateway to making that happen. If you don't have it, you simply will stagnate and won't be able to grow effectively.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about what Vercel has now with V0, right, they've taken a slightly different approach, which is almost to build their own coding agent into the site. So V0 is like, don't worry about an MCP server. We want to target people even further down the spectrum of knowledge of how to do things, right? Like they're saying, just come and chat, and we'll build your app literally for you, and then you can push it to Git from here, as opposed to building it in your code platform and then pushing it to our platform. So, have you guys thought about you must have had some conversations about this internally. I'm curious if you see that V0 approach as being, not as exciting as the MCP approach, or vice versa, or do you feel like you need to do both, honestly?
So I think this is a philosophically interesting question. So I think in general, just to say, V0 has done an exceptionally great job at building essentially a world-class vibe coding platform on par with Lovable and Replit. We used Lovable internally. We use V0. We use all these products to kind of prototype. But what we're seeing is the kind of vibe coding, the V0s and Lovables, they're targeting a slightly different audience than what Render attracts. So these the engineers or the individuals who are using these products are not engineers by trade, and they purposely want to avoid being technical, and they just want to ship a product via simple queries. What we're seeing is also, in many cases, these products, or what we're seeing is many users starting off with Lovable and V0s, and then quickly realizing they want to have more control over the code base. They want to ship more complicated features that these platforms simply don't enable them to do. They want to be able to build more complicated experiences that's really hard to just prompt your way in. And in order to do that, they're quickly realizing they need to escape that, write the code, and push it, enter Cursor and start shipping it in a platform that enables them to own the experience end to end. And this is the market so effectively, this is the market that we're serving now with MCP server, are the individuals who want to have full control of their experience. They want to own the code, and they want to be able to basically avoid just depending on prompts alone to build and support their customers.
It's very interesting because I do feel like both of those are valid, right? Like I'm someone who's more likely to probably use V0 because I'm not a developer. I struggle sometimes to get from my coding assistant to the computing platform. But I've also gone back and forth. Like, quite honestly, sometimes I don't bother going to V0 and I just push directly to Fly or Render. So I sort of feel like it's compressing into almost anybody's, even someone who's not a developer like me, being able to do both. What I would really, like, the kind of real question, the elephant in the room a bit is if these AI agents can deploy to any platform via MCP, doesn't this kind of commoditize the whole advantage of render? I mean, the whole point of render was it was like, and better than AWS because it gives you a simpler onboarding path. But if all that work is being done by the model, does it kind of hurt render's moat? Does it hurt render's differentiation? I mean, I'm assuming you must be having these conversations internally. What are you guys thinking?
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. But we're actually seeing the opposite. What we're seeing is the customers themselves. What we're seeing is V0s and vibe coding is helping customers build simple products and like get their immediate need of like, I need the page to do this. I need a simple app to do X, Y, and Z. However, we're also seeing is like the amount of complicated products being created now has never been higher. What happened is small teams using LLMs are now empowered to ship like applications that are rivaling giant incumbents in the space. And the complexity of the products that small teams are shipping is actually exponentially increasing as well due to the LLMs. And while V0s and Replets today are effectively supporting the simplistic use cases, render is meant to help you build really complicated product and scale that without necessarily overhead of infrastructure. So I don't know if I'm making kind of the point clear, but we're actually seeing growth in two areas. One is these like individuals who just want to ship something simple, and then number of people who just now want to take on basically Salesforces of the world with a team of 5. Yeah. They are also they're today using render to do that, and we want to serve that market really, really well.
That all makes a lot of sense to me, and I think I completely agree that LLMs are going to make this development cycle. I think what makes is the sort of elephant in the room, though, is just this question of how are you going to differentiate as an infrastructure provider in a world where the models know how to use any infrastructure provider? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell my model, hey, my bill is getting really high. Can you lower my bill? What's Google offer? What is Amazon? What is Azure? What is DigitalOcean? You can, like, you're my DevOps engineer now. You figure it out for me. Just keep my bill low. I don't really care where I'm at because I don't even know the features that differentiate these platforms. They're completely invisible to me. And that's the part that, as a long time, coming from a background in a lot of infrastructure as a service and hosting and stuff, I worry that we're really almost, like the DevOps person's familiarity with, AWS is complicated as hell. Render is really easy. And it's much like if I'm trying to do DevOps, it's way better for me to use Render or Vercel or Fly or Railway because they're easy. If I don't have to do the DevOps, then I don't really care, right? Like you put it wherever you want. So how's that sort of land? That's the part that I keep kind of coming back around to with how fast we're moving towards zero DevOps.
Yeah, I don't like. It's really hard for me to tell you when it's going to be zero DevOps. I'm sure it's coming at some point in the next century or so, but we're not there today. Like I think realistically, we're simply not there today. Models are great at writing code and at supporting your immediate needs, but they're not great at managing infra. There's too much complexity involved, costs, human factors, security, all these things that you simply will not outsource to a model just to do that today. You want to be able to have a trusted partner that can actually effectively guarantee certain things like security is my networking setups, being able to tie two services together, being able to scale them effectively. All these things are still, if you just go to, they're still on a config layer that cannot be just offloaded to LLM to manage. And there's certain know-how and skill that involves there. And we're hoping to close this gap, put render kind of wrapper on top. But I can imagine in 5 to 10 years, 100%, LLMs will become substantially better, reasoning will improve, and the question there is, what's going to be the competitive angle that render can offer? To be clear, I think to a degree, we predict 2 things will be true. 1, the complexity of the products will evolve, and the infra required to match the complexity will also continuously increase. We're seeing already this today. So developers are moving more jobs to the background operations. Developers are really using a lot more databases and types of different databases in their stacks. The tooling itself that the modern tech teams depend on to build their products is actually also growing in complexity. And we suspect as long as that complexity grows, render will be able to have a competitive advantage in serving that complexity or obscuring that complexity away from developer mindshare.
Well, you guys have done a great job so far. And so, if anyone can bet on anybody to be able to keep finding ways to make developers and small teams punch above their weight, I think Render's a great bet to do that. So congratulations, Craig. I sort of dominated the questions here. Did you have anything you wanted to add? I'm super interested in this because I'm using it all the time now. And I'm almost to the point where I want to try something like, hey, cursor, move my deployment from Vercel to Render and see how it does, because I'm not sure it won't fail. I think it might do just fine.
We'll all Vercel anyway, but please try doing this, and also set up a background job. Get yourself a really, get a database while you're at it as well. Use the full stack. You should love it.
No, I mean, blob storage, all of it. It's just happening so fast. I think it's an awesome time. You guys must be seeing some really awesome use cases. So, Slav, thank you so much for coming on. We'll certainly would love to have you back to keep talking about this. It's really exciting work you're doing.
Yeah, very
amazing.
cool.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. All right, that was really fun, Naseem. I hope you enjoyed the conversation from the other side of the country. I know you're in New York, so thanks for joining us.
Wow, that was a really incredible demo, Slav.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it?
Wherever he went.
Well, it's funny because he was excited for yours, so I think he'll probably be sticking around and watching as well. So, Naseem, you're going to talk to us about really diving into analytics and observability on MCP servers that you are publishing, right? So this is for people who are interested in, they built an MCP server and now they want to figure out how people are using it, how to improve it, what the adoption looks like. Did I get that right?
I mean, and incredibly spot on. Some of these MCP servers are such black boxes. You put them out there and all you really have are API logs to start off with. I mean, I know some teams that are basing traction entirely on GitHub stars. So
I think that's there's some VCs who base that on that. So let me turn the screen over to you, and we'll drop out and let you take it away.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Awesome. So I just wanted to get us started with jumping right into a demo of the MCPcat platform. So Shannon actually put it quite nicely. What we do is essentially give your MCP servers all the tools you need to understand what agents are doing with it, when they're messing up, and what their most popular use cases are. So it's really useful for understanding what's missing in your MCP server, but also fixing issues that can arise. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in here on some of the metrics that we show you. So this is the MCPcat main dashboard, where we have a lot of high-level analytics on how your server's doing. So we have daily active users, new users in the last week. And then we have a concept that MCPcat introduces called sessions and active sessions. So by default, the main way to look at MCP servers is looking at tool logs that are coming through your whatever logging you might have set up yourself or piped in. We go one step further and associate all existing tool calls with what we call sessions. So for example, when Slav was giving his demo on how to use the render MCP, and he asked it a very explicit question, like, why is this API slow? The series of tool calls that come after that, we consider one session in MCPcat. And that's really important for understanding sort of the user's goal later on. And so we can show you how many sessions occurred. Some nice graphics here for users compared to sessions being done with your MCP server. Here, we actually have some pretty fun visuals. So on the left, this is assuming some of Stripe's data. It's a complete demo instance that I have set up here for you guys. We actually introspect on your MCP server sessions to tell you the most common goals that people have with your server. So here, given the Stripe MCP, it seems like a lot of the usage being done here is to refund transactions, cancel invoices, and maybe create some links. MCPcat is doing this by analyzing your sessions, and we'll get into that later. And then another very important metric to go off of is how many sessions actually result in a tool call error. Tool call errors can happen one of two ways, either an actual backend error that your API reports, or a parameter error that happens even before it gets to your server. So just the AI misunderstands how to call your tool. And we see that 70% of sessions, actually end up with some errors in them. Moving on here, we have a little session replay information, which I'll get to later. And then we actually show you where the clients, where your users are coming from. So whether it's Claude Code, Claude Desktop, Klein, Cursor, Windsurf, etc. Something that's really fun is I wanted to share some statistics with you. So actually 90% of the traffic going through MCPcat is coming through Claude Code, Claude Desktop, and Cursor. We found that quite surprising ourselves, but it seems like, those are the most robust agents today. And so that's where most of the traffic we're seeing is coming from. But you could get this for your own MCP server and see one of the main reasons this is helpful is if, users are coming through Klein and you haven't actually tested or evaluated Klein for your server, you'd probably want to. The last step that I wanted to show you on this dashboard was to show you most used tools and tool call latency. Here we actually show you all the tool calls being made with your server and actually how frequently they error as well. So for example, in this Stripe demo instance, it seems like creating a refund errors a decent amount of times. So you would want to dive into that. Now, how would you? Well, you can use MCPcat's session dashboard to actually dive into when errors are happening and sort of reconstruct what the agents were thinking as they were making those tool calls incorrectly. So you can see all the sessions being taken with your MCP server. This is, updated within a few seconds of a session occurring. We even do support anonymizing this data. So I have created this demo instance to show you the maximum amount of data you can get, but you can kind of surface to your users optionality on, is their data anonymized, is it not? So for this purpose, I've gone ahead and even identified users. So we can go ahead and look here that for this session, Jennifer had 13 tool calls over around 6 minutes. And she was actually using Cursor and she ran into an issue. So let's take a look at what this issue says. So here we can see that she's running version 1.1 of Cursor. We actually get a little bit of a summary on what her goal was. So it looks like she was trying to analyze monthly revenue performance. So doing some revenue analysis across the board. And then the exact version of the Stripe MCP she was using and more details on it. This is where it gets really fun. So here you can walk step by step what the agent was thinking as it was trying to analyze the monthly revenue. So it looks like it goes ahead and calls get Stripe account info, tries to understand what type of business she's running, reviews all active subscriptions to calculate monthly revenue. And eventually it seems to come across an error on listing all the coupons. And if you've never used Stripe, this is pretty much any discount code is called a coupon. And so here it seems like it ran into an error with reviewing the active promotions. There would be, you could actually dive into more details on this. This is just some demo data, but you could see the response and the message that was taking place. So yeah, one thing that we find really helps with debugging is actually you can grab a link to this session and share it with your engineers to debug. So you can say, oh, I'm going to put this in a ticket, and this is all the context that you need. Normally, if this error occurred, you would actually have to sort of rely on Jennifer to share with you what she was trying to do and how she came about this issue. And you'd also have to have a little bit of a information gathering with her to find out, well, was she using Cursor? What version was she using? You could even go back to previous sessions that Jennifer has taken place, you know, and understand her usage on a larger scale. So that is, you know, a very brief summary of some of the leverage you can get with having a solution like MCPcat in place. I wanted to go ahead and quickly touch on what it's like to get started and how it works. So let me go ahead and share our GitHub repo for our TypeScript SDK. We have a Python SDK as well, and we're working on a Go SDK. Should launch next week. Very simple to get started. npm install MCPcat, and for all of our SDKs, it's just one line of extra code. You call .track on your existing MCP server with a project ID that you can get from MCPcat. It's free to try. You get 1,000 sessions for free and every month. So, you know, and we even have an open source program for projects that are open source. You'll get higher usage for free, you know, mostly forever. So in order to actually identify sessions, we have a simple identify hook so that on every tool call, you can actually identify the user and publish that and tie it to the session. We also have integrations with existing data vendors. So we support OpenTelemetry logging, Datadog, and Sentry. So, you know, if naturally you don't want to have your data in a new tool, you know, we have classic analytics that we send automatically for any MCP server. You don't need to sign up for MCPcat to leverage this. But this is sort of how MCPcat works. So your MCP server runs, and under the hood, we have in parallel an MCPcat agent that is sort of grabbing context from your MCP sessions and publishing classic analytics to any vendors, but more of the agent session replay to our actual dashboard. Under the hood, the way that we're reading the minds of the agents interacting with your MCP server is we're actually injecting some parameters into your tool calls to force the agent to play nice and share some context about what it's trying to do. Now, I mentioned that we're showing you all the data you can get with your MCPcat, but everything is actually configurable. You can actually turn off the agent context telemetry. You can even redact anything from the context or responses. We've kind of taken inspiration from Datadog on this. So any data that gets sent to any server, whether it's your vendors or MCPcat, you can actually redact completely with any redaction you'd like to support. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the demo, and I guess now we'll take some questions.
Thanks, Naseem. That was great. I can absolutely see the usability. It's like you offer a lot of cool free capabilities as well, just for anybody who wants to pipe out their logs and get some stuff to you know, to their traditional, you know, their existing analytics providers. Kind of brings up one of my first questions, which is, so, you know, where do you see the fit for this in an analytics and for an organization that already has those analytics providers that are, you know, I'm already paying Datadog, I'm already paying New Relic or whatever I'm paying for my observability and analytics.
Yeah.
What, you know, do you feel like there's just those projects haven't caught up and don't really offer any value to MCP operators yet? And so you think there's a window here to add value, or do you feel like they may never catch up and this is a long-term opportunity to build a new layer of observability?
Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer is they have not made any solutions to get you this kind of visibility. So, you know, even if you were to use existing data vendors, depending on the framework you're building your MCP server on, you actually have to pipe all this context logging in yourself manually, and it's quite the effort. So the short answer is they haven't done anything. The longer answer is I think understanding how agents are using your products going forward is quite a unique problem to solve, and I don't think existing observability really cuts it. So yeah,
makes a lot of sense. And when you think about like the area that you're pulling kind of specifically, if I read your diagram right, is all that session information is kind of flowing specifically to MCPcat. How are you dealing with privacy stuff there? I heard you talk about anonymizing the source, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any PII or anything else that might be going through this thing isn't ending up in your database and your SaaS. Like, have you guys already addressed that, or is it something you're planning to address, or how? Given your background with Opal, I would think this is something you guys might have a thought about, and so curious how you thought about this.
Totally. So I think I touched on it just a little bit, but essentially we offer localized redaction on anything that gets sent to anywhere. So before anything leaves your server, you can redact it. And honestly, most MCP servers should have this redaction in place. So if there is a customer sending your MCP server PII, like, you should have a redaction filter. And MCPcat is compatible with any of those redaction filters. So you can, find PII and remove it, like whether it's a, driver's license number, credit card, all of that is easily filtered out before it even touches our own software. So
there's a lot though still in that session. I mean, realistically, there's a lot. I mean, those sessions are rich, full of information. Obviously, I think as the MCP developer, I'm super eager to get my hands on there. As the platform operator, that puts a lot of really important knowledge sitting in your database. How are you guys approaching that and giving your customers some confidence that their most important, these conversations are remaining private?
Yeah, definitely. So we are SOC 2 compliant. We have everything pretty much encrypted at rest. There are some columns that are even encrypted before they get written to our database. It's about proving it to our users, getting audits done regularly. And I know that some of this data seems like it's a lot, but quite genuinely, this is very little data compared to other platforms that we all know and use. Like, there are so many platforms that do human user analytics that have tons of this data. And even already, most people send logs to Datadog unredacted, which isn't okay. So I think, generally speaking, we haven't seen a ton of people nervous about it, at least not from our end.
Cool. Craig, I've been dominating the questions today. You have any questions you want to ask?
No, I thought the concept of injecting some parameters to kind of capture the intent of the LM was a very interesting approach. And it kind of speaks to sort of an idea we've been playing with, which is like, should these MCP servers expose fine-grained tools at all, or should they only expose that sort of like, give me your intent and I'll figure it out on the back end? So I'm curious if you see things heading that way, if you've seen any MCP servers doing that, or, just kind of any thoughts on that area.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Craig. We've seen some, I have seen like one or two MCP servers say like, hey, give us your goal and then we'll give you the tools you need and expose them to you to reduce kind of like context window bloat. But it's so few, honestly. No one's really doing it. And then you also run into the trouble with once you start using some of the more advanced features of MCP, you start breaking clients. Like, so many clients don't support sampling yet. So many clients don't support elicitation properly yet. So honestly, you have to be quite careful with implementing that, because then you'll break your server for a lot of your users. And you can find out with MCPcat.
Yeah,
broke it.
Your SDK, I saw, you're wrapping effectively a server. Is that server you're wrapping, is that a MCPcat object, or can that be, other, SDKs?
Yeah, that is the MCP server. So it's not a MCPcat object. It's the MCP Model Context Protocol SDK.
Your official
object.
SDK. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So the only thing you're doing is just importing MCPcat and calling .track on the existing server objects.
Got it. Cool.
So yeah, no additional configuration needed.
It's kind of crazy, right? We're 10 months old for MCP, and you guys are, you're building a product for analytics on a protocol that's relatively new. And I mean, I love it, right? Because you're betting on this standard in the same way we're betting on the standard. And most of the people coming on the show or watching the show are believers in the standard. But in a lot of ways, I wonder if the patterns and the work you're doing aren't going to apply almost regardless of where standards and protocols end up, because this layer of how do we observe AI is new and it's interesting. And I think that, I don't know if you guys, just watching kind of the OpenAI announcements of the last week, if any of that made you think, oh, I think what we're doing applies very well to an OpenAI application that may, it's probably an MCP as well under the server, but it might require some additional things. Have you guys started thinking about that? And
yeah, I mean, I imagine it's similar for you guys and OBOT, right? So, what we're both building, like you guys are building incredible controls around, audit trails, like making sure agents are executing safely in enterprise environments. Like the current way to do that is MCP. We don't know for sure if MCP will be the main protocol, right? But we know for a fact that agents are seeing traction that's necessary, and whatever protocol that is, we're going to follow it. And so it's really, both of what we're building is completely agnostic to the current implementations. I mean, I assume in 3 years could be completely different.
Or just a continued evolution of the thing that takes off.
Yeah,
this was honestly, Naseem, I could talk to you all day. I love the way you're approaching this. I really think your intentions approach is really smart. I think that's the kind of stuff that is really going to be valuable for people to understand. And I think you're just really I love this project. So fantastic job building it. Hope you'll submit a talk or maybe get involved, since we're going to be out in New York for the next MCP Summit. Would love to have you guys there speaking, sharing, maybe helping us pick the talks. That's another thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, but we're looking for people to get involved in the program committee. So awesome to see people diving in early into this ecosystem, and really all the best of luck to you. I think this company, have you guys already, are you a full, this has nothing to do with Opal, right? Like, it's a totally different company, or, completely independent?
Yeah. So, Opal is running completely independently. I have a wonderful co-founder who's still in charge. And yeah, MCPcat is, fully funded and ready to go. Small team right now, but I mean, Shannon and Craig, we'd love to also have a talk at the summit. I have so many ideas on interesting statistics we could share for that talk. So,
I mean, 6 months from now, I can't even imagine the data you're going to be able to share. So please submit a talk and make sure you just reach out, man. We're super enthusiastic about what you built, and it's exciting times.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. It was great having Slav on today. Craig, thanks for filling in for Darren, and hopefully we'll keep having so many great conversations. Thanks everyone for joining us. This will be up on YouTube in a few hours, hopefully, as a separate talk. So, take care.
We'll see you.